So, Mikel Arteta's Arsenal have beaten Xavier Hernandez's Barcelona by 5 goals to 3 in a thrilling pre-season friendly. Today, I'm going to discuss, from the perspective of both sides, where the game was won and lost, and start introducing the topic of fluid rigidity when it comes to Mikel Arteta's Arsenal. Another experiment by the Spaniard yesterday, which I'll get on into, and this going back into this concept of fluid rigidity was a large reason why Arsenal toppled Barcelona yesterday. I'm going to start with the systems and the setups for both sides. And in terms of Arsenal and Mikel Arteta, all I will say is rotations and rotations and more rotations. Both sides, Arsenal and Barcelona, built up yesterday in a 4-2-4 or a 4-3-3 shape. And I'm going to start with Barcelona. They progressed from this 4-2-4 or 4-3-3 shape into a 3-2-5 or mostly a 3-1-6 shape in settled possession, where Alonso tucks into the back three and the opposite fullback in the first half, this was Sergio Dest, becoming the wide sixth man in attack, or in the second half, Sergio Roberto on the right-hand side, or on the left-hand side, Balde, who had a great cameo, I thought, by the way. And as a side note, very similar to someone like Chelsea's Ian Maatsen. Can be a half-space player or a wide man, tucking in also to a back three. And it means that for these wide attacking fullbacks in this 3-1-6 shape, often seen by Ten Hag at Manchester United, Rafinha, Torres, Dembele, Ansu Fati, these wingers in this scenario invert into the half space, where their sort of elite combination play is really taken advantage of, and this is why Barcelona can be so deadly. When both Barcelona fullbacks promoted, they formed sort of a 2-2-6 shape, with Kessie and De Jong in that pivot. Now, for me, I think this shape is overly fluid at times. For example, going back to Arteta, Mikel loves sort of rotations, but in a pretty rigid system, as I'm alluding to and going to get on to. But De Jong and Pedri, for example, in particular, have that license to at times drop deeper and then roam higher up in between the lines, which can leave Barcelona, I think, open at times. Normally this is okay though, as their technical quality can hold on to the ball for so long, and this is just nitpicking. Arsenal, again, very, very fluid in their actual settled possession shapes. But I say shapes in a plural because they too change structure. But as you'll see, this was much more premeditated and calculated. This idea of fluid rigidity, something I will talk much more on, not just today, but in another video I have coming up linking to Arteta's sort of experimentation this pre-season. But back to Arsenal, they progressed into a shape for the first time in a long time under Arteta without a clear, characterised inverted fullback. Timber and White stuck to the more traditional back four roles, whether that was the 4-2-4 or the 4-3-3, progressing in initial build-up, and in controlled possession had a higher set point, sort of alongside Partey in this horizontal axis. But this, for the majority, left Thomas Partey as sort of a lone six in a single pivot. And this sort of shape verged on a 2-3-5, which Ange Postecoglou uses at Spurs, as I've discussed earlier on in videos. But he uses double inverted fullbacks. In this case, they were much wider and higher, the set points of Arsenal's Timber and Ben White. And this 2-3-5 sort of shape is a completely new dynamic for Arteta and Arsenal, and something in the analysis I've seen coming out from this game, something no one has ever touched on. Sort of what I've seen is people have said, yep, good performance, much better from Manchester United, done. Well, it's another experiment from Arteta. And this new structure is something that hasn't been mentioned. This invites, with Timber and White on this horizontal axis, for them at times to help out and invert if they want, but also it encourages the interiors to drop deeper, mostly Martin Ødegaard and Leandro Trossard when he rotated from left wing where he started, let's say in a 4-2-4 or a 4-3-3, into more central areas, sort of rotating with Kai Havertz in that first half. So let's take Arsenal's initial build-up. We'll start with a 4-3-3, which they used. It's basically Partey in that lone 6 with essentially two 10s ahead of him. And with Ødegaard and Vieira in that right interior role, Smith-Rowe and Trossard in the left, you're able to overload with two aggressive 10s, because all these four players that I've just mentioned are so press resistant. But when Havertz was a left interior, which was for the majority of the first half, he had a much higher set point. He started high in between the lines as a left-hand sided 10, or at times even a shadow striker. And this meant Trossard on the left wing rotated, like I said, to drop into a pivot, forming a 4-2-4 shape in initial build-up very, very often. And that was Leandro Trossard's role, coming from not just rotating from the left wing into central areas to support Partey in a pivot, but fluid rotations everywhere. And he had a remarkable game. So, with Trossard supporting Partey and Ødegaard starting slightly higher, probably the first point in the whole of pre-season where we've replicated the Partey, Xhaka, Ødegaard midfield dynamic from last season, even if it was against Barcelona just for the initial build-up. And this will probably make a lot of people very happy. But this fluidity is all so calculated. Leo just from wide, Havertz with that higher set point is encouraged to actually move into that wide space that Trossard has vacated. And as Trossard comes deeper, like I said, his press resistance is unbelievable. This rotation is something completely new, and something that suits both players. Havertz will be so hard to pick up in this sort of new role, starting as a midfielder and then allowed to roam in behind. This typifies his skill set into moving into pockets of space, and it's why a lot of Havertz's, I think, touches are misleading, because a lot of them show them sort of in the central areas of the pitch, but this is actually in transition with him in line with Barcelona's back four. And again, there wasn't a whole lot of those touches. In 45 minutes, he completed just 17. But the Raumdeuter is about being in the right place at the right time, exploiting pockets of space when the opportunity comes. Havertz is not the type of player to drift deeper to get touches on the ball. And these rotations, fluid combinations and interchanges don't stop here. For Arteta, he wants the same channels always occupied, but gives the license for different players to occupy these areas of the pitch. And this is a large reason why we've been so proficient in the final third this pre-season. If Trossard drops in, Jesus may pull wide, Havertz may occupy the centre-forward position. Trossard may also find himself in the centre-forward, as he did for his second goal with the Tierney assist. With Jesus, actually in this scenario, was on the right wing. Vieira was in that right-hand-sided half space, number 10. Saka was the left interior, and Smith-Rowe was on the left wing, and Tierney as the sixth man. And also, at one point, Trossard was playing the right-hand-sided half space, number 10 role in that front 5-6 as well, playing triangles with Bukayo Saka and Ben White, Ødegaard the other aggressive interior, and Havertz this time at the back post where we normally would see someone like a Martinelli. And as I said, this is the best environment possible for Kai Havertz to play in. He's sort of an environment system player, and he scored another goal attacking the box from deep against Barcelona. So this fluid rigidity is the main takeaway once again. But there were other systems trialled, clearly with intent by Mikel. Again, there was no clear inverted fullback. There was sort of that openness where if Partey needed support, either the interiors could drop deeper or Timber or White could support him there. And this was all, in the first instance, trying to form this 2-3-5 shape. And I think from Mikel, a large reasoning behind this was to stop how devastating Barcelona were and can be on the counterattacks. And this was not always successful against Barcelona, but the idea behind it is to form this wall of three to, when we have settled and controlled possession, marshal at the edge of that Barcelona box to stop opposition breakaways. And I think the reason why this didn't work wasn't anything structural, tactical, or sort of technical, but it was because the game was so fast-paced. No one actually found settled possession either side that often. One last shape, though, was the 2-2-6, or even like Xavi's Barcelona, the 3-1-6. White as that sixth man in the first half, but more often Kieran Tierney in the second half on the left. Partey again as that lone six. But just before I go on to both sides out of possession, I want to touch on Thomas Partey. He was tasked today with the role in that single pivot. And this is a major, major statement of trust from Arteta. At times, I think, Thomas Partey has struggled in this position as a lone six in his career at Arsenal when we've not always had an out-and-out inverted fullback, maybe when Xhaka has had to do that role from left back, but it looked against Barcelona like the Thomas Partey we know. His pass selection for me was the best because it was much more reserved and conservative, especially when you're in that lone six with either sort of more fluid rotations if someone's going to rotate into a pivot next to you or one of the interiors doing it. You need to focus even more on ball retention. And, you know, his past choices were really, really good yesterday, which in tandem in the competition between Declan Rice and Jorginho, whose temperaments are really good on the ball, Partey seems like he's learning. His verticality is a great part of him as a midfielder, but I've always been slightly critical of him, you know, sort of losing control of games too much. But yesterday, 90% pass accuracy, which was vital in sort of a really intense, fast-paced match that neither side sort of had the settled possession as they'd like. And Partey was fundamental in us winning this game and controlling things. And these situations, seeing him grow into that role is very, very impressive. And I was very, very impressed from a Thomas Partey point of view. And this also makes the case for Rice and Partey coexisting, as Arteta has himself in third, maybe Rice in the left-hand sided 8 slot, Partey behind him in that 6 with an inverted fullback next to him. Now I'm going to go over to the presses of each side. We'll start with Barcelona once again. They normally press in what is a 4-4-1-1 shape, but for me, yesterday it looked much more like a 4-2-3-1 with the wingers inverting into that sort of middle block of 3 and the fullbacks, Alonso and Dest or Balde and Roberto, really pushing on to press Ben White and Timber. And on paper, their press matches up with Arsenal's lack of inverted fullback very, very well. But it was Arsenal's constant rotations that disrupted this at times and caused chaos. It often meant Saka, who was the player who held the width constantly on the right-hand side, was much freer, as on the left, with all these interchanges, we worked the ball very well, switch play, and Saka, unsurprisingly, was the most potent player on the pitch again. Despite the penalty miss, I think he could have walked away with 2 or 3 goals. And he dropped, like an 8 out of 10 performance. And again, we haven't even batted an eyelid. I really am running out of words to describe Bukayo Saka. And now to Arsenal, they've used the same sort of 4-4-1-1 press, like we've seen Barcelona use in their time, throughout the whole of pre-season. But there was a slight adjustment by Mikel Arteta, which I found interesting here. As we are playing Barcelona, sort of an uber technical side who build from the back, you know, that's their main intention, unlike United who like to mix in more direct sort of last phase play with building out from the back. And this formed a 4-1-4-1 press for Arsenal. And this press really is just as fluid with rigid boundaries, with Jesus, Saka, Havertz, and Ødegaard all sort of taking the role at times of that front man. For the first half, mostly it was Jesus in that 9, Havertz and Ødegaard in the 2 behind him, with Ødegaard tasked to man-mark Romeo in the 6 and really stop that central progression from Barcelona. Smith-Rowe did this job on De Jong in the second half, and the reason Ødegaard and Smith-Rowe are allowed to vacate and leave this block of 4 at times is because you essentially, in that 1 in between the midfield and defence, Thomas Partey, you essentially have a free man who, if Ødegaard and Smith-Rowe promote to follow their number 6, they can fill in the gap in that block of 4. And with fullbacks who are so aggressive, again in White and Timber, forcing their way onto the opposition fullbacks, any gaps that could potentially open up are closed almost instantly. And sort of these similar approaches from Xavi and Arteta is why the game was so fast-paced, And there were times where, inevitably both teams got through. But Arsenal's press meant Barcelona at times, I think, really struggled to connect, certainly the midfield to the attack. And at times they were able to do this with sort of players drifting, De Jong into different areas of the pitch, Pedri, also players who excel in the combination. But I think with the balance of this 4-1-4-1 block and also man marking, Arsenal managed to deal with it well enough. And look, another pressing structure is something that will be very useful going forward. Now we've sort of got shapes out of the way, I want to touch a bit more on individuals. First, a little bit extra on Leandro Trossard. I said he had a remarkable football match against Barcelona. And I think there's been seemingly a lot of talk on social media about this guy's game time being limited. Absolutely not. He's more and more becoming, I think, one of my favourite Arsenal players. The Cazorla links have been circulated in sort of style of play. And when you see Trossard's low centre of gravity, his press resistance, his ambidextrousness, ability to play high, deep, and wide at the same time, his intensity in the duels, despite his physical hindrances at times, you really can see these Cazorla Trossard links. They were both on number 19, of course. And I think my favourite football players are always the one that when they receive the ball is sort of, it's in safe hands. And with Leandro Trossard, sort of that manipulative dribbling in tight areas, the technical security, his ball striking, strong although not powerful, playing the game at his own tempo. I just love him. And although, as I've said before, in more physical games, I'm unsure if this deeper left 8 role will be absolutely his. He's flourishing in this role much more than I expected, I'll admit. But looking at it, why should that be surprising? Now going across slightly deeper in the pitch to Jurrien Timber, who started as left back. A really encouraging performance once again. I've said so much. We should be just excited for Jurrien Timber as Rice and Havertz. I really urge you to go and watch my scouting report on him because you'll get a much more comprehensive view of him as a football player. I was really happy with that video. But anyway, another right footer playing left back like we've seen Pep do, like we've seen Arteta do with Tomiyasu. Tomiyasu has been fine there, especially sort of in that left centre-back, left-back hybrid role when we form sort of our typical 3-2-5 in settled possession. But Timber, his turning circle, his change of direction is really allowed to be shown off in this left-back role, or this more generic fullback role without a clear inversion. Also, Tomiyasu, just as Timber, is both very good in the 1v1 duels. And it was no surprise Timber was effective here. Really aggressive against Rafinha, certainly, in the press. And it's a new part of his versatility that I didn't realise he had in his locker. But again, it's not very surprising considering how good he is on the ball, how comfortable he is playing with his right foot despite being on the left. And Tierney, who then came on for him as a sub, put in another very, very positive display. On Kieran Tierney, I think with the new trial dynamics, this has suited him a lot more this preseason, and he looks much more refined with his usage on the ball as well. But Tierney's for, I think, another video in itself. Now I'm going to talk about defensively because the goals we did concede were still very, very poor. I don't want to see like it's not all sunshine and rainbows. They're very, very pre-season goals to concede at the same time, but still it's very, very sloppy. And this has been a theme conceding chances earlier on that we certainly need to focus on. And I think that I'll do a little bit more digging going into off camera now. But one positive defensively is Saliba in that more traditional back four. We talked about Gabriel and his experiment in that defensive 3-axis against United as a central centre-back that didn't really work. The over-the-top balls against Barcelona, which there were quite a few of, Saliba became that central centre-back and was immensely composed and dealt with them really, really well. We've gone to the defence. We've gone further down the pitch. Now I want to springboard back up and talk about Fabio Vieira. He scored a wonderful goal to round off our victory, that 5th goal, that left-footed curling strike into the top left corner. And look, his ball striking has never been an issue with anyone. And Arsenal fans, And I think fans around think about it. No matter what you think about Fabio Vieira, because there's been a lot of mixed opinions, why should Arsenal, this is my point of view, please get in the comments below what you think of Vieira, because I would love to discuss that. But from my point of view, I would say, why let a player go that can deliver sort of guaranteed output whenever he is in and around dangerous areas, sometimes out of nowhere? And this is a quality that's sought after everywhere. A devastator in that final third. And why it's why you shouldn't give up on someone when their base, their floor as a player is elite ball striking, both in terms of creativity and goal scoring. And think this base with him, it's not just in terms of structure on the pitch, but I think it's his own experience and confidence. I think you have the potential of a seriously top footballer here. And we're still going to be left frustrated with him, I think, in the upcoming seasons. And there'll be times where probably a lot more fickle fans will again turn on him. But when he is in these decisive positions, you can really trust Fabio Vieira. And I think that's just the whole takeaway. Let's just trust Vieira. Let's just trust Mikel Arteta. Because like I said, his floor as a football player is outstanding. And that brutal sort of end third quality and output, guaranteed output, is something any squad would love, and certainly something Arsenal as a squad need. Going over from sort of that right interior role to the left interior role with Emile Smith-Rowe, he played that left centre mid role when he came on, and like Leandro Trossard, I think, and unlike Kai Havertz, as we've seen these changing dynamics in this left centre mid role, he's able to naturally affect play deeper on. This is a part of his game that's not normally been attributed to him. And I think with a bit more development, he can be nurtured into this role. For example, when in form, the ball seems stuck to Emile Smith-Rowe's feet. He's a natural carrier, can turn out of positions, sort of create those false transitions, and then drift higher to receive in between the lines. And if he can be nurtured into having a more conservative pass selection, he can definitely do this role and influence things even more than he did against Barca. And he has this within him. And when playing well, again, time sort of stands still on the pitch. And that's why he often popped up on the left wing and why he has in his Arsenal career. He's able to play that direct role outside to run with the ball, but also that sense of timelessness on it to play that more retaining wide role out there. Before we wrap up the video, I want to mention Mikel Arteta's comments after the game, because I would love to do, in a way, a completely separate video on this, because there's a lot that has come out of his press conferences and post-match interviews that is very, very interesting. He mentioned we're seeing the best version of Gabriel Jesus right now. Causing chaos was his words, and I totally agree. He's looking like the mobile, confident forward, creating something with every action he gets on the ball. We saw up until his injury last season. Physically as well, he looks amazing, and I think his hold-up sort of retaining link-up play has always been a real underrated part of his game, as it is with Eddie Nketiah as well. And for Leandro Trossard's first goal, this caused chaos. That ability to go long, have the runners around him, and Trossard on the left, Saka on the right, and going long over a really aggressive, often man-marking press is something I have touched on a lot, and something I'll touch on more, and something potentially a 6'4" Kai Havertz has already and will continue to bring us. Arteta also talks about how great a shape Leandro Trossard is in, and that links to why he's played so many minutes and played so well. He also mentioned 30 players in this squad, and of course we're going to need outgoings, whether that's on loan or permanent deals. Now to Xavi's comments. He talks about intensity, and I don't really want to get into this debate as I find it quite trivial. But his side, I think, what the thing I would take away from those comments are, I think it's more that neither side were particularly aggressive, or any more than normal. It was a very well fought competitive match, but I think his side, his Barcelona team, are just behind in terms of their preseason preparation. They haven't played the number of games Arsenal have, but that doesn't discount what Arsenal did. They were deserved winners. But I wanted to do more on Barcelona today, but I think for this point that they're not as advanced in terms of their preseason prep, I'll leave that for a sort of a later date. And any intensity is really good for both sides in terms of fitness. But other than that, the possession was very 50-50, recognising sort of similar tactical ideas until Arsenal's main ball retainers came off around the 70th minute mark. Then Barcelona pretty much dominated the ball. We lost our way slightly, often played in a 5-4-1 sort of mid to low block, and played on the break, though, very, very well, which we have the right profiles to do to mix up. So, to sum up the game, Arsenal's fluid rigidity was the main takeaway, and this links to the experimentation Mikel has been doing and will continue maybe to do so far in pre-season, and a piece on this unpredictability and what he's trying to do is on the way. Also have a piece on Pochettino and Chelsea on the way. That's already filmed, but I'm just waiting for probably the right time to upload that, maybe in a day or two. So that's all to come, amongst much, much more. So I continue to really enjoy making these videos. I'm so happy that the reception has been so good. I can't thank you enough for the support. I didn't have a clue how this YouTube stuff would go when I started, but it's the reception has been lovely, so I can't thank you enough. And I'll continue to put out content. I'm back home sort of from holidays now, so I want to upload from this video now, do daily uploads until sort of I'm away again. So like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. I only ask at the end of the video for you to do this, because hopefully you've reached the end and found it entertaining, insightful, whatever. So do all that good stuff if you like. I'd love you to share the channel as well, and really, I want to grow and make a real nice, well-knit community over here. But that's all from me. I'll catch you in the next one. See you later.